I probably need to make this video that you're watching right now. Why do we take DNA tests? I mean, why? There's got to be so many different reasons. Why? And maybe more importantly, the more relevant question is psychologically, why? What are we hoping to get out of this? You know, maybe some people were adopted and they want to find their long lost family. Maybe people like me who have always speculated that they were part certain things like Jewish, and turns out I am part Jewish according to the test. So we have the base reasons, but ultimately, why? Why does it matter that I'm able to prove that I'm technically 12.5% Jewish? Why does that matter? Because I think part of the human being experience is knowing who we are as people. You know, I've talked before on this channel about identity, protective cognition. We have a grasp of who we are as individuals. And if anyone attacks that, whether it's a belief about ourselves, you know, like for example, I'm a vegan, and I don't go around talking about it in real life, but when people find it out, a lot of times I'll see these very overweight diabetic men, and then they're telling me how unhealthy I am. And then of course I instantly see the irony. I don't fire back at them and say anything about the fact that their survival is based on them taking medicine in order to, prescription drugs, to survive and stay alive as they continue to eat way too much meat and sugar. I don't care. It's not part of my identity to convince other people of those things. But I'm a vegan, it's part of my identity, but I don't have identity protective cognition when it comes to me being a vegan. If anyone says anything negative about being a vegan, I just say, yep, you're probably right, and I move on with my life. I don't care. But other people, those other men who are diabetic and overweight and survive only because they're on prescription drugs to treat their onset diabetes, which was caused by eating too much meat and perhaps sugar. You know, that's part of their identity, and they have identity protective cognition when it comes to eating meat. And their concept of what it means to be masculine, right? So I say all that. I know that sounded like a rabbit trail, but I use that as a visual, as a story, to point out the fact that all of us as individuals have a concept of what we believe represents our identity. And I think part of the reason we take these DNA tests is perhaps to enhance that version of who we are. Perhaps the more confident we become as individuals, the more, maybe even more emotionally intelligent we become through that experience, because I think the more we accept who we are and understand ourselves, the more intelligent emotionally we often become, and hopefully we can understand other people better. But to better enhance our identity, doesn't it only add to it to know ethnically, scientifically, genetically what we are? I think it builds on the experience of the identity. And that's, to people who don't understand emotional intelligence, they may think, well, big deal, who cares so much about your identity? But that's the whole thing. You know, I believe one of the things that makes us successful in life, more so than anything, and I've read Emotional Intelligence 2.0, a book that explains that your IQ only gets you so far in life. It actually shows the results of these studies that show that people who are the most emotionally intelligent are the people who make the most money and get that much more ahead. Even people, more so than people who have a higher IQ, it's the EQ, the emotional intelligence, that actually gets you further in life. And just for the record, the easiest way to explain emotional intelligence is that you have a strong sense of who you are, you understand yourself, and you therefore also understand other people. To the degree if someone comes into work and they're not talking, and they're just kind of keeping it to themselves, me as an emotionally intelligent guy, I would say, hey man, what's wrong? That's only going to make it worse. And maybe later on in the day, I would say, hey, if you need to talk, I'm here. And then I'd disappear. But I wouldn't keep trying to engage in conversation. Hey, did you see the new Wonder Woman movie or whatever it is? I would say, hey, they're going through something, and I'm going to let them go through it privately. And then I'll discreetly let them know I'm here if they need me later. That's emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is being so secure in your identity that other people's beliefs don't bother you. I made a video recently talking about the transracial movement, that a person can be born European and he identifies as a Filipino. You know, and okay, fine. Let that guy do that. Let other people do that. Let them identify as other races. See, I'm emotionally intelligent. So I can say, you know what? I can't relate to that personally, but I don't need to. It doesn't matter because that's his version of his identity. And that's how he finds his identity. I'm okay with it. I'm obsessed with emotional intelligence more than anything. More than ethnicity, more than DNA test. This is what I care about the most. So naturally, as it's part of my identity to be obsessed with emotional intelligence and this whole concept of identity protective cognition, that the more emotionally intelligent you are, the less identity protective cognitions that you have, where you get offended when someone attacks your identity in any way. So I think it's part of the journey of emotional intelligence, that it's a fun little accessory to be able to know what our ethnicity is, because it just kind of builds on top of that to be able to say that. And hey, if nothing else, it lends to more interesting conversations. Since finding out my results of my DNA test, I cannot keep count of how many engaged conversations I've had with people, maybe waiting in line or at a birthday party that my son was invited to, and I'm talking to other parents. You're sitting there, you're staring at each other, you're trying not to stare at each other to look away. It's an interesting topic. It's fascinating. People are fascinated by the concept of identity. And in a way, we almost get to change our identity to some degree. We get to modify it when we realize, hey, I never knew I was 13% this, but now I do. It helps to, like I say, modify our identity, and we can accept that more. And it's not to do a fake out. It's not like, you know, I found out my great-grandmother's Sephardic Jewish, so suddenly I start wearing a yarmulke and lighting candles. It's not like that. But it's just it's a respect for where I came from. And for me, absolutely, my ethnicity, even if culturally I'm disconnected from it, it's still part of my identity, and I accept it. I build on top of that. I think so many people neglect their identity. They don't realize that what emotionally affects them has to do with mentally and physically who they are. But I do. I'm an emotionally intelligent video host who is also obsessed with DNA and ethnicity. So, you're welcome, because I think if you'll let me, I'll talk more about emotional intelligence as people will Google that, and identity protective cognition. These are fascinating things. Enough people aren't talking about them, and I want to, but I won't make videos about them if you're not going to watch them. So it's up to you.